Welcome to Talking Saratoga, a weekly podcast with insight on the latest news, debate, and discussion from Saratoga Springs, a city that has never suffered from a shortage of opinions. I'm Robin Dalton, a New York City girl turned Saratogian, city council veteran, and mother to a bunch of kids who are probably playing unsupervised on Caroline Street right now. I'm joined by co-host Dan Federicis, a native of the Buffalo suburb of I can't do it, Dan. I still can't do it. Help me out.
I'm going to look forward to this every week, and by week 6, you'll have it right. Cheektowaga, New York, outside of Buffalo.
Cheektowaga, New York, outside of Buffalo. He is a retired New York State trooper, past police union leader, attorney, publisher of the Saratoga Report, husband and father to 2 beautiful daughters, and a lifelong beleaguered Bills fan. Go Bills Mafia. Adam Israel is a lifelong Saratogian, a local business owner, Pop Warner dad, and most recently dipped his toes into politics as an independent candidate for Commissioner of Finance. A reminder that the opinions expressed on Talking Saratoga are our own and do not represent any other group, person, or organization. We welcome all perspectives and opinions while Talking Saratoga, as long as they are expressed honestly and with mutual respect. So that said, let's jump right in. It has been a wild week. There have been 2 pieces of breaking news that are unfolding right now. One concerns the Darryl Mount death, and the other is about the mask mandate that the city council lifted for all city buildings. We will get into that in a little bit, as well as the masks in school and what went on at the Board of Education meeting last night as well. But first, we want to start off with the Darryl Mount case, because there has been a tremendous amount going on there. And Adam, why don't you intro that so people and bring people up to speed as where we are and what's going on before we discuss.
Sure. And we're going to touch on this subject because it is something that's very important today, but we plan on going more in depth with a panel of people next week to kind of give us some really break down what the report said. But essentially, the Public Safety Commissioner, James Montanino, released a report on the circumstances surrounding the death of Darryl Mount. He was a young man who suffered serious and ultimately fatal injuries while fleeing police in 2013. I think we want to start with the prefatory remarks that Commissioner Montanino said, that Darryl Mount was a human being. He was a son, a stepson, and a brother. He was a friend to many. His passing at the age of 22 was a tragedy that not only cut short his life, but also robbed his family and friends of cherished memories. James goes on to state that in his analysis that the objective was to be impartial and must not be misrepresented as being disrespectful to Mr. Mount. Hopefully our analysis is as well. In the early mornings of August 31st, officers from the Saratoga Springs Police Department approached Darryl Mount on Caroline Street after they witnessed what they believe was Mr. Mount assaulting his girlfriend. Mr. Mount ran away and the officers pursued him. At the end of the chase, Mr. Mount was found unconscious, bleeding face down in an alley, apparently after falling 20 feet from scaffolding. Mr. Mount suffered brain and other injuries, immediately went into a coma, and remained in a coma from brain and other injuries for 9 months, and he eventually succumbed to those injuries. It resulted in an accusation against our police source and a lawsuit against the city filed by Mr. Mount's mother.
Quick clarification, Adam. I don't believe he was in a coma the entire time. I just wanted to point that out. Although he did,
actually, in looking back,
succumb.
He was never able to speak again. I know that, but
yes, he did succumb to his injuries ultimately. Sorry. So carry on.
Well, that's an important part. Commissioner Montanino concluded that the officers involved in the initial pursuit of Mr. Mount, and I quote here, acted appropriately under the circumstances that they existed at the time, and that the information known to the officers at the time warranted immediate action. He stated that Mr. Mount was resisting a lawful arrest supported by probable cause by fleeing from the police. He disputed a doctor's opinion that Mr. Mount sustained his injuries from an assault, and he stated that there is overwhelming evidence from which a reasonable person can conclude that no police officer was near Mr. Mount at the time he suffered his fatal injuries. This report seems to overwhelmingly support and exonerate the actions of our police department that evening. We will be dedicating the majority of next week's show, like I said, to discussing his tragic death. The repercussions have been felt throughout the city, and it's important to say that Mr. Montanino did not find fault with our police department. He did criticize our current commissioner, or the previous commissioner of public safety, Commissioner McKeeson, and then the Chief Veach. But today, Robin and Dan, I'd like your quick thoughts on the meaning of this report and what you took from it.
I'll start.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Folks, if you have not read this, you really should. It's a very readable document. It's only 38 pages. It's packed with informative and enlightening information. He used the word dispassionate. Adam, I'm glad you started with the beginning of that report. I'm glad Jim wrote that he was a human being. He was a lot of things. He balanced it. He didn't try painting Darrell Mount as an angel, but he balanced it. I think he gave the facts as he saw them. That report is available on the city website. It's available on Saratoga Report. Presumably, Adam, it's available on What's Going On Saratoga Facebook page, or it will be if it not already is. It's out there. I encourage you to read it. It's an important document, and I look forward to next week when we break it down even more. I'm just going to close by essentially borrowing what the Times Union said about the report in an editorial yesterday. At last, some sunlight is the title of the editorial. In 38 highly readable, searing pages, Saratoga Springs Commissioner of Public Safety James Montanino takes a clear-eyed look at the facts as they are now known and comes to two unmistakable conclusions. Those are in the report. I will quickly point out I don't agree with what I view as the harsh criticism of a retired Chief Greg Veach. Does he deserve some criticism? Certainly, but I thought this went overboard, and we'll get more into that next week.
Yeah, there's so much to talk about here. I think the headline for everyone, honestly, is that Darrell Mount was not murdered by our police department, which has been the assertion of Saratoga Black Lives Matter, specifically over the last 2 years. The refrain I hear most often from them is, "How do you spell murder? SSPD." And in these 38 pages, it really leaves no doubt that there was no involvement of the police officers that night in Darrell Mount's death. Mayor Kim last night, when talking about this report, said it was very thorough and grounded in fact. And I quite agree. I also take issue a bit with the criticisms of Commissioner Mattison and Chief Veach. Both Commissioner Mattison served, he was 2 commissioners ago. Commissioner Martin was prior to myself, and then Commissioner Mattison served for 6 years prior to that. Chief Veach left 3 years ago, perhaps. And so Chief Crooks is now our chief as well. That's a whole other issue. The one other thing I wanted to mention, though, that I thought was so kind of shocking to me about this report is that, first of all, there was another witness that came forward very recently who was a bartender at Gaffney's, and WNYT has been reporting on this. He came forward, he says, because he saw the leader of Black Lives Matter on TV talking about what had happened to Darrell Mount. He had been reluctant to come forward before. He just didn't want to get involved. But hearing this narrative from Black Lives Matter apparently prompted him to contact the attorneys and say that he had indeed been a witness to what happened to Darrell Mount and saw him fall off scaffolding. Video surveillance confirms that he was at Gaffney's that night. He's been deposed. And so these two things coming out at the same time really do exonerate our police department in a way that I think really is great and needed to happen. But at the same token, Commissioner Montanino, after walking us through this incredibly thorough, detailed reasoning as to why they weren't culpable, then goes on to say that, so in light of that, he believes we should settle the civil suit that is currently being litigated with the city from Patty Jackson, who is Darrell Mount's mother, who filed a wrongful death suit against the city. I find that shocking. I don't understand why we would settle that or admit to any guilt in Darrell Mount's death when he has literally just proven in great detail that we had no involvement. So perhaps that's an issue to talk about next week. But that was one of the things that I felt, was kind of shocking to me at the conclusion of this, was that he exonerated the police, but then said we should settle the civil suit.
Yeah, I thought it took a lot of leadership. I said this in the last show to Commissioner Montanino that if he doesn't believe our police are murderers, to say something, and he did. What kind of shocks me, and Robin, when you were Commissioner of Public Safety, if you came out and said I did a report and Darrell Mount Darrell Mount died in the report, how would that gone over?
I would have been burned at the stake.
I think you would have had some words at your next city council meeting. It seemed like the local Saratoga Black Lives Matter, they didn't have the same objection to this report and this finding that they would have And I'm just curious as why. I'm hoping there's no quid pro quo there where, James or the city council made a deal with them that they're going to say exonerate the police department, but in return, something like perhaps, settle the lawsuit. But again, I think next week when we have a more diverse group to talk about this, we'll get into those issues. And so I think that'll lead us into the next segment is the city council meeting last night and some of the
Although, real quick, Dan, you as an attorney, Dan, any quick thoughts on the settling the lawsuit, or is that something you want to save for next week?
I do want to say that for next week. I will have some things
Okay.
to say, and I may surprise you a little bit.
Okay, I'll be holding my breath for that. But yes,
All
so
right.
one of the purposes of Talking Saratoga, one of the reasons we are doing this is to talk about some of the drama, action, controversy, and money exchanging hands, laws being made and sometimes being broken. What am I talking about? I'm talking about city council meetings. We tape on Wednesdays because city council meetings are held on the first and third Tuesdays of the month. And so we've done the heavy lifting for Saratogians. We've sat through these meetings, which can sometimes go for hours. We've sifted through the agendas, and we are here to bring you the highlight reel of what happened at the city council meeting that was last night. So where should we begin, Adam?
All right. Well, let's talk about where a subject we talked about last meeting, and that is the appointment or the lack thereof of an attorney and a assistant attorney for the city. In our commission form of government, the mayor appoints these positions, and the attorneys represent all 5 members of the council as well as the city. Mayor Kim did not reappoint Vincent Tony, and he wants to adjust the hours and compensation of the city attorney position. And so he's, Mayor Kim's an attorney, his deputy's an attorney. That was the idea is they could handle the attorney rep for the city. This has drawn criticism from this panel and this group. Yesterday, he kind of switched course on that with appointing Tony Izzo as the assistant attorney. Or maybe Robin, you can speak to exactly the appointment and Attorney Izzo's role with the city now.
Sure. So yes. So at the end of December, Mayor Kim informed Vince Dillenardis, who'd been with the city for 8 years, and Tony Izzo, who'd been with the city for 30 plus years, that they were being let go as assistant city attorney and city attorney. So for the last 6 weeks, we've been flying blind without a legal department. But last night, Mayor Kim introduced a announcement and then a discussion and vote appointing Tony Izzo, bringing him back as a temporary city attorney until they permanently fill that appointment. Tony Izzo, in my opinion, is officially up for sainthood and deserves all of our praise and love. He's really a beloved person in Saratoga Springs. I think he's touched the lives of so many people and he's worked with so many people over the last several decades. And to have him back, I think it's a great thing because he can get a lot of things going that have been kind of like halted for the last 6 weeks in city court specifically, meaning like land use issues, code enforcement cases, any traffic violations. Those are all settled in city court, and to move them forward, we need someone from the city to argue on behalf of the prosecution and represent the city. Tony Izzo can do that and get things going. He can also do things like write the resolutions for the city council members, which are really important because that language has to be spot on and legally sound. So I think it's a great thing that Tony has rejoined the team, but he certainly can't do it alone. It's too big of a job for one person. I also think it is incorrect to have the mayor and deputy mayor act as legal counsel for the city. I hope this means that they will stop doing that. We know Judge Waite had a serious problem with that and gave them a serious tongue lashing for their involvement, trying to play both roles at once. Although we also know that the rest of the city council, save for Commissioner Sirocco, has no problem with that. They have now gone on record in one of the Foothills Daily News articles saying that they think it is entirely appropriate for a mayor to play a dual role as city attorney and mayor. I disagree. Dan, what do you think?
I said last week Ron needed to get this behind him, and he made a shrewd move at this point. He made a lot of mistakes for the past 6 weeks, a lot of drama. You talked about the judge's letter. There were editorial boards, the bloggers, an ethics complaint. How far that goes, we'll leave for another day. But nonetheless, it didn't make Ron look good. And I said he had to have it behind him in March, and he made not only did he hire an attorney, but Robin, you said it perfectly. He hired a great attorney. No one is going to question the qualifications, experience of Mr. Izzo, and I have confidence now that where things were falling off legally, he will quickly get back up to speed and so forth. And one thing I'll point out is when Mr. Izzo moved on, Ron had some negative things to say about him and Mr. Leonardis, which he shouldn't have done. But we're dwelling a lot on the past. Nice save, Ron. You needed to do that. Now going forward, you need to have, if not a couple of wins lined up, at least no flubs for the next 6 weeks. And I'm serious. We don't need to see negativity. Ron, if you didn't know it before, you've got some enemies out there, and they will jump whether there is a valid reason to or not.
Yeah.
I think it's important to go ahead, Robin.
Oh no, I was just going to say I've only wanted the city council to succeed. I may not agree with them politically, but that really doesn't matter. The only thing I want is for Saratoga Springs to be successful, for the employees in City Hall to be able to do their job successfully. And for that, we need a successful city council. So we always hope for the best, but I'm an equal opportunity critic and I'm not going to hesitate to criticize. But yes, I hope that we have
Nobody ever make that claim in life. I will say I read that yesterday. I think yesterday was actually the 36th anniversary of the first time Tony Izzo was appointed to work for the city as an attorney. So that really goes to speak to him spanning the generations here in Saratoga.
Yes.
So, anyway, we're happy to see that. There was also a feasibility study about the state park yesterday that Mayor Kim announced.
Dan apparently is offended by your transition and has walked away, but hopefully we'll get him back.
I have a minor family situation. They will not stop for this podcast. I will be back in 60 seconds.
Okay, right. So that wasn't a walk off the set. Okay, good. So yes, Adam, keep going. There was an item on the there was an item on the mayor's agenda about expanding the state park. And I think he said the idea was brought to him from Gordon Boyd and Billy McTighe. I think that you and I mean, everybody loves the state park. I love having park around the city. I think it would be very cool to expand it. But the item last night just said that they were going to ask Governor Hochul to do a feasibility study on what that would look like. They didn't articulate any of the details of where, when, or how the state park would be expanded, unless I missed something. Did I miss something, Adam? Did you catch that?
Yeah, I didn't see that either. I want to say I'm completely behind this idea. I think most people are. But I think we need to get some more meat of what exactly who's going to pay for that, where it's going to be expanded to,
yeah,
what it will look like. I think the city council, they're new. We'll give them a pass. Having the documentation loaded up to the website before city council meetings is not something they're particularly strong at right now. So things like this feasibility study we can dive deeper into. But for right now, the idea seems great. If they can pull it off, fantastic. We'd love to. I think everybody in the city really thinks that state park is special with SPAC and the golf and just the ability to get outside.
Adam, I think it's good that you're going to give the city council a pass for being new because they're 2 months in, but I'm not going to give them a pass. Uploading things like, so folks, when you go to look at the agenda to see what's going to be talked about at the city council meeting, there are supposed to be supporting documents attached to every agenda line. So when it comes to a discussion and vote about asking the governor to do this feasibility study, you should be able to click through and see what the language of that request is going to be to Governor Hochul. It wasn't attached. I would say about half of the items discussed last night did not have supporting documents attached. Really strategically, the only reason you would do that is such that the public doesn't know what is going to be voted on and thus does not have time to criticize prior to a city council meeting. You're finding out as they're voting on it, which does not allow for feedback or public comment beforehand. I don't find that to be a transparent way to conduct business, although it is, I guess, a smart political strategy if you want to avoid any negative feedback. So while we wait for Dan to get back, should we go into the infrastructure committee and the announcement about the infrastructure committee, Adam?
Sure. So the city council is being proactive about receiving this money that's out there that's possibly coming in from the federal government for things like infrastructure. Mayor Kim has appointed Joanne Yepsen. She was a former mayor of the city to chair the committee as well as other appointees. And I'm just interested, Robin, being in the city council, if they, say we got a big pot of money that could go to infrastructure, it's a broad term. What infrastructure in this city would you like to see improved?
Yeah, so this committee is going to be prioritizing what they feel the infrastructure needs are and where this money should go. I have some pretty strong feelings about it, but I kind of want to hear from you guys first. Dan, what would you do if you were able to decide where infrastructure money for Saratoga Springs went if we got some from the feds?
You're asking a father with young kids where the money should go. Okay, that's teed up for me. Recreation. Everything. This is a great city already. We have indoor recreation. We have outdoor recreation. The city runs several recreational facilities that my family uses a lot of. Waterfront Park was put in the last 10, 12 years. Could you believe for years we didn't have a Saratoga Lake Park access in the city? So some great things have been done. I'm always about more. Some of that carries over into the tourist area, especially downtown, and some security issues for anti-terrorism. Every few months we hear about a deranged individual riding a dump truck up onto a sidewalk. Well, you know what? I walk downtown and I look around. I say, there are a lot of access points where a vehicle could do horrible damage. I would love this city to have visually appealing barricades that nobody could do that. And there are security issues well beyond that go deeper than what I know. But so a combination of things between the recreation and things that help the city enhance what it already does so well, and that is be an attraction from really the whole region of the country.
Adam, what would you spend this infrastructure money on?
Right. So I think the first thing was having traveled a number of times in my days. I spent some time in Amsterdam, and the bike lane infrastructure there is phenomenal. It really
is that why you got to Amsterdam, Adam, for the bike lanes? Keep going.
I know what you're talking about, Robin. Anyway, moving on. The bike lanes there, it's just to be able to get on your bike and to safely get from point A to point B, and point A, point B being a meaningful destinations, was something that's really special for a city. It can drive tourism. It can cut carbon emissions. It really is a win-win. So I know in the past we've put in bike lanes. I don't think they were done particularly well. They don't really connect, a meaningful point A and point B. You don't feel safe when you're on them. You feel like you're in the middle of Lake Ave. Robin, when you were commissioner, you were in charge of striping those lanes. What are your thoughts on those bike lanes? And real quick though, before you answer that, I would say the other thing is curbs. I'd love to see our curbs improved. I know that's a kind of a weird thing, but I just think our city, you drive around, the curbs are chipped and some were paved over, and it doesn't help with rainwater and excess flooding. So I'd love to see our curbs, the curb appeal, beautified. So, but getting back to the bike lanes, Robin, what's going on with the bike lanes and just kind of being out there in the middle of Lake Ave?
Well, let me touch on two things first. One, you guys would both make great politicians because people love hearing that you want more parks and recreation and bike lanes and connectivity. That is really politically appealing here. So you both make great politicians. I, on the other hand, am more of a realist. I'm a little more practical. This infrastructure money needs to go to one critical area, in my opinion, which is Geyser Crest neighborhood, because they have suffered for decades and decades with debilitating flooding anytime we get rainfall. And that has to be addressed. I mean, these are folks who have to put sandbags out around their house anytime there's heavy rain coming. And if you have seen the images of what those roads and yards look like when we've had a decent amount of rainfall, it is really bad. And so that should be our number one priority. Bike lanes, rec, all this stuff, that's all well and good if you have these, fundamental infrastructure issues under control. But right now we don't have them under control. Our pipes and sewers and everything in Saratoga Springs, they're aging, they're old. Our infrastructure has, been through a lot of wear and tear. But Geyser Crest to me is the number one priority. In terms of bike lanes, I cannot take responsibility for the Lake Avenue bike lanes. That was done under Commissioner Martin. I think they're totally janky and terrible, to be honest with you. I think the design stinks. In my opinion, the best practice for a bike lane is to put a buffer between the traffic and the bike lane, not just a single stripe. It's really hard to see that stripe driving up and down Lake Ave, especially at nighttime. It's a heavy truck traffic route, and I wouldn't send my kids on it. Plus, you use it and you end up on the intersection of Lake Avenue and Henning. Where do you go from there, guys? I'm not sure there's any destination on that corner. You're kind of just stuck. On the other hand, you bike in towards town, and the bike lane ends, I think, at the corner of Regent and Lake Avenue. So where you go from there, I don't know. We, at the end of my term in office, recommitted to the Complete Streets plan that was adopted by the city years ago, and I believe put about $250,000 in the budget line to, take a step back, look at the existing trails and bike trails that we have right now and develop them in a way that makes sense and gets you from point A to point B and aren't just piecemealing things that don't work cohesively. Also, I know the downtown connector trail is something that has been underway for years and years, and it just takes a long time, but it is also doing what you, Adam, expressed is needed, which is connecting a trail that would connect to the trails outside of the city such that you'd be able to go from like, SPAC all the way into the city and out the other side over by let me think, the northeast side of the city. Is that right? Yes, I think so. So progress is being made in those areas. Go ahead, Adam.
I was just figuring out where the northeast. Well, clearly Dan and I are more into like kind of the sexy infrastructure projects, right? The ones that look good. Robin, you're more into the functional meat and potatoes ones that really keep the city going. I think that probably comes from you sitting on the city council and having to deal with this.
But Adam, we do love Geyser Crest. We don't want to get hate mail from Geyser Crest. We do agree.
That was number 3 on my list.
That, she has the experience of being on the city council. She knows where the deeper issues are. So certainly we can partially agree.
Can you imagine if you had to put sandbags outside and around your house every time there was a big rainfall coming because the flooding was so terrible and it was going to flood your basement? Like, that's nuts.
You illustrate it more than I've ever known before. I knew there were flooding issues there. There was a new development in there in the past 5-8 years, and there was quite a bit of talk about the flooding and whether that development would make it worse. And so I'm glad you illustrated that. That really drives it home.
Yeah.
All right. Well, speaking of bikes, that takes us into our next subject with a bike share. The city council signed a MOU with CDTA for a bike share program, committing $75,000 in matching funds to participate in the bike share program. City employees will get free bike share memberships. Not sure how many bikes or what it will look like, but I'm wondering what was your take on this MOU with CDTA, Robin?
So quick adjustment. Initially, it did say there was $75,000 in matching funds. Last night at the council meeting, it's actually only $25,000 in matching funds to participate in this bike share program with CDTA. My question when I saw this on the agenda was like, this is awesome. But what does it mean? Does it mean, because we have a bike share program right now, it looks like it, I think, if I recall correctly, it's sponsored by CDPHP. Does that keep the existing bike share program we have now, or does it expand it? Are we adding more bikes? Like, what does this mean? They voted to spend the $25,000 and participate in this, but no one on the city council seemed to have an answer to the questions that I just articulated. To me, I prefer to have the details of what I'm getting before I spend money. And I would have preferred that they have those questions answered before they asked the council to vote on spending money. No one else seemed to have that objection. And so they did pass this resolution last night. Dan, what did you think? Did you catch details that I missed here?
A quick aside on a related issue, CDTA was supposed to bring electric scooters here to the Spa City last year. They did.
I know.
Pilot programs in other cities. It was supposed to get here last year. For some reason, it didn't. They've been mum on that since. I'd like to see that happen. And let's face it, spring is going to be here closely. I know you might not think so with the weather this past weekend, but it is coming. So I'm really thinking about spring and summer. So I hope that goes. On the bike share, give CDTA some credit of what they've done in the past. Right now, in many areas of the Spa City, on your with an app, you can rent a bike, drop it off in a completely different spot than you rented it from. There's a spot over by the state park, a spot over by the track, some spots downtown. Very well done. I want to find out more about this before I comment on it. I'm not totally prepared on this issue, but I'm generally excited by this. Your reservations, I agree, Robin. We will follow up with that on a future show.
Hey,
yeah, so real quick, let me just jump in with the electric scooters. I've been to some cities with those, and they're awesome. You get an app, you find a scooter, you hop on it, and poof, you go. There's a lot of issues behind that, though. And I was actually talking to a doctor in one of these major cities who said that the emergency room emissions were up dramatically from these scooters because people just you get on it and they can move. So that's something to keep in mind. But the other thing too is me for this is Robin, is the laws surrounding these scooters as far as that you're viewed as a pedestrian. At least where I was, this was actually in a different country, so I don't know how much it's here. But if you're on a scooter, do you follow the roles of a car, a bike, and a pedestrian? So just some things to think about. Robin, take it away.
No, that's exactly what I was going to touch on, which is that I know that the city had been working on code language that address things like motorized scooters. We have now motorized like skateboards. There are bikes that have motors built in. All of those things we need to get up to speed with in terms of our enforcement language and how and where you can use those type of vehicles. I don't know if that's been done yet, but it is a concern because right now, bikers and runners don't seem to understand the rules of the road. I mean, you need to bike with traffic and you run against traffic. People don't seem to even know those basics. So it does make me a little bit nervous because we really need bike lanes to be able to have safe biking, and we don't have the bike lanes we need to have safe biking. So I think, I'm glad all these things are happening, but I think safety has got to be number one, and we have to be mindful of that.
Excellent.
All right. Outdoor
Uh,
dining was also brought up yesterday. I know this is something that everybody enjoys. It's nice to be outside. Dan, how about you? You like eating dinner outside?
Yes, as you know, I'm an unashamed Saratoga lover. I love everything about Saratoga. I love the restaurants. I love the outdoor dining. I want more of it. I recognize there are other issues that go with it. It's not all good. The Daily Gazette did an editorial on the commissioner's outdoor dining proposal to extend it for 3 years. But obviously, I'm for that, recognizing that other businesses have concerns, neighbors have concerns as well. But generally, where it can be done, I would hate to see old regulations and old laws hold that back. So we have to move forward on that.
So just to be clear, Commissioner Moran had a public hearing last night to talk about keeping the expanded outdoor dining that happened during COVID in place for the next 3 years. He is voting on it. The city council is voting on it at the next city council meeting, which will be the first Tuesday in March. My thoughts on this are as follows. I love the outdoor dining. I think it's awesome, and I think it should exist forever. However, the reason that we had to keep incrementally expanding it and continuing it was because the SLA, which is the state liquor authority, adjusted their language to allow for this extended dining area, these extended dining areas, such that their liquor license, the establishment's liquor license, would cover the expanded dining, so they could serve alcohol, in the street or sidewalk or wherever they'd expanded to. I don't know that that language is going to exist forever with the SLA. So it was important that we extend our outdoor dining in step with their language. Otherwise, you might not be able to serve booze and in these outdoor dining areas, which would be problematic. The only other negative that had come up over the last 2 years was some of the businesses that are on the same streets as bars and restaurants that aren't first floor brick and mortar, bars, restaurants, and have customers or clients. They all lost their parking. And so I know that was a challenge and some of the negative feedback we got. But by and large, I think hopefully we would be able to work with any individuals who are experiencing that kind of unintended side effect. And I just think this expanded dining is a great thing. I think they did it well. I give huge thanks to DA Collins, who were the ones who got us the barriers for the outdoor dining and are picking them up and storing them and bringing them back when we open up outdoor dining availability again. So thank you, DA Collins, you rock. But I think this is a good thing as long as it's done in a way that we can drink outside as well, not just sip iced tea.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm for this. I'm a big believer in as the water rises, the ships goes up. Hopefully, the businesses that are losing parking will be offset by having people in front of your shop, seeing your goods, and hopefully coming in and buying something. All right, there was some COVID-19 updates yesterday. Robin, as the former Commissioner of Public Safety, you were in charge of the city's COVID-19 response. We're definitely a different place now. You want to talk us through the COVID-19 updates of the City Council yesterday?
Sure. Yeah. So sure. First of all, this is something I've been trying to get clarification on, but have not. The Public Safety Department is tasked with the emergency responses, and because we have the emergency medical professionals in the Public Safety Department, for whatever reason, the Commissioner of Accounts has taken over anything COVID related, and it's no longer being handled by Public Safety. I don't really get that. Doesn't make sense to me. I wish they would communicate that to the public because people are looking for information and answers and don't really know where to look. They still keep coming to me, which is fine. I'm trying to help them as much as I can, but I would appreciate that clarification at some point from the city. But at any rate, our rates are down, which is awesome. And most excitingly, the city has lifted its mask mandate for all city buildings. Very recently, the Commissioner of Accounts had passed a resolution saying that all city employees needed to wear KN95 masks. They spent about $8,000 buying masks. That was about a hot minute ago. Kind of think that was a little bit of a waste considering now they've lifted the mandate, but who cares? Let's look forward. Let's not look back. I think it's great that we're getting healthy and, we don't all have to wear masks everywhere. And I can see your beautiful smiling faces. So that's a good thing.
Dan, are you for taking off the mask in City Hall?
Yes, and I grapple with everything COVID lately. Like it does, I have a daughter that's too young to be vaccinated. I have elderly in-laws that even if they are vaccinated, could still have a devastating result from it. At the same time, I have COVID fatigue. We do have to live our lives and learn to live with COVID. It's not going away anytime soon, and so I am happy to see that going forward. I'm trying to have it both ways, right? I'm trying to be as cautious as possible, and I'm also trying to move on.
You guys, I don't know if you've observed this, but I took my kids to Price Chopper last week and they went to go grab their masks. And I told them exciting news. The governor says we don't have to wear a mask inside businesses anymore. So we could go to the grocery store mask free. They were kind of like pumped, but cautious. We went to Price Chopper. I swear to God, 95% of the people there were still wearing a mask. And then the three of us felt so self-conscious. And I started getting all this anxiety because I felt like I should have a mask on too. And so it's kind of like, I want everybody to be doing things at the same time, and I know that everyone's doing things per their comfort level, but it's just kind of it still feels like a very anxious situation for me because I don't want people to think I'm being irresponsible if I'm the only one not wearing a mask. Have you guys noticed that or observed that at all in businesses?
I've noticed certainly a reduction since then. In certain the places you'd go, it's flipped. It's 5% are wearing masks.
Yeah.
But I still generally, if I'm in a crowd of indoors, especially, I'm choosing to wear mine. But it depends on where you are as to the mask usage.
And I know later, Adam, we're going to touch on the school board meeting last night, and masks were hugely a central issue there. But before we do that, let's just try to round out some of the final items at the city council meeting. One of which was an announcement also about a New York State film tax credit. I kind of was confused about the details of this. Adam, I don't know if either you or Dan can describe it to our viewers a little better than I could.
Yeah, so I didn't quite understand what this tax credit was or who it targeted. I mean, I know it targeted the film industry, but exactly how. I think Commissioner Shangvi, the Commissioner of Finance, didn't get it either. There was some back and forth between her and Commissioner Moran about it. I commend Commissioner Shangvi because I think our city council, as well, they're voting as 4 Democrats. I'd like to see them, if they don't agree with something, speak up and not just, rubber stamp things for the party line. So Commissioner Shangvi, congrats on that. It seems, without knowing the details of it, my general thought on tax credits like this that go to that the state or the federal government hands out is they typically go and they really benefit the large companies. They benefit the companies that, we had Owen Wilson in here and that was great for the city, but the small movie producer, could he benefit from these tax credits? I would hope so. I mean, I think you really see it with Amazon. They are the benchmark of not paying taxes and having the money to hire a team of accountants to go in and make sure you don't pay taxes. So I'm generally, as far as tax credits goes, trying to steal business from surrounding communities or states. I'm really generally don't like that because it's just giving breaks to making the rich richer to spite our fellow Americans, New Yorkers, Saratogians, what have you. So that's my thought on this without having more information. That's kind of my thought on these tax credits. Dan?
Oh yeah, Dan, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. These have existed at the state level, at least going back to the Pataki administration, and I believe maybe even to Mario Cuomo administration. Especially, they started down in New York City, where obviously a lot of movies are filmed. And I question, and a lot of people question, long before I did, whether the taxpayers are getting any value from this, the money that is lost in taxes and so forth. Certainly there's some economic benefit to having movies come to an area, but I'm a skeptic somewhat. I want to see the numbers. And so, it's neat having Owen Wilson around town. Everyone tells me, he's at the cigar shop, nice guy, blah, blah, blah. I want to see numbers. I want to know that it's valuable. So we should take a close, scrutinized look at this.
All right, you guys, I got to disagree with that. You guys are losing it. when Owen Wilson was here, the crew and the amount of people they brought with them, I think it was something like they used 36 different Airbnbs while they were staying here. They ate out, they were lunching, they were spending all their money downtown. They brought a huge amount of people here. They brought attention here. And ultimately, it was a great economic stimulus. And we rarely see this happen because it is so much less expensive to film in places like Canada. So I think that encouraging, more films to be shot here by giving them some small financial incentive is a great thing because they're coming here and spending all their money here. And I think the Chamber of Commerce and my sister-in-law, Anna Maria Bellantoni, who is like responsible for getting them here, yay, Anna Maria, and the accounts department who facilitated the filming here, they did a freaking awesome job. If we get more filming here, I think it would only be a good thing. And yeah, Owen Wilson rocks. So hopefully we get more cool people like that. But you two are too cynical, too skeptical.
Adam, before you speak, I got to interject. Robin, if that costs $5,000, fine. But what if it costs $1 million? That's what I say. I want to see the numbers. I'm not saying it's bad, but I want to know there's a value.
Oh, what do you mean costs? Oh, in terms of
the
tax.
What economic benefit? How much economic benefit versus the taxes lost? The taxes lost. If that costs us $5,000 in taxes lost, I'm all for that. But there's got to be a benefit to the city and the cost benefit ratio.
I'm not sure how to quantify. I mean, it's not in my skill set, but I'm not sure how to quantify the economic benefit of how much they spent here and how much, how many dollars were infused in the community. But I'm sure somebody knows how to do that. And numbers and details are important, certainly. So what else do we have on the agenda here? Adam, there was an update on the city finances from Commissioner Songvi, and I know she said that we have had one of our strongest years ever in terms of sales tax. Is that correct?
Yeah, which is great news that really shows the city is kind of rebounding from COVID. I as many as you know, I did run against Commissioner Songvi for finance. She beat me during the campaign. I would say, she campaigned tough. I campaigned tough against her. I wanted to not like her, right? She was my competitor. She was the lady I was running against. Her politics, at least on a national level, I would say don't always align with mine. Luckily, on a local level, that doesn't matter as much. After the election, I've gotten to know her. I think she's so far doing a great job for the city. And like I called her and I told her this, and she got a chuckle too. I find her annoyingly charming.
She's super nice.
She's super nice, yeah. And you want to not like her, but just be, not.
Oh, you wanted to not like her, but it is easier running against someone who you think isn't, great. But she is certainly likable.
She is likable. So, as far as the finances are concerned, Commissioner Songvi is the sales tax is up, which is great. She's trying to bring accountability and transparency by doing, and I always mess this term up. It's participatory.
Participatory. So participatory budgeting was something that was introduced last night at the City Council. Commissioner Songvi thinks that our city finances are not, and our city budgeting is not inclusive. And so she asked Bob Turner, who's a Skidmore professor. Commissioner Songvi is also a Skidmore professor. So she asked Bob Turner to have two of his students look into participatory budgeting and do a presentation to the city council on what that is. I have two quick observations there. One is that we do have a very inclusive budgeting process. Once the comp budget is released at the beginning of October, we then have a series of workshops for each department that the public is invited to, where that individual department presents their budget and workshops it and, takes feedback from the public. And that's a whole month-long process. Not a lot of people come because guess what? Not a lot of people are interested in doing the city budgeting and finances. Commissioner Songvi's proposal would allow for any residents to be on a committee that would be given about $250,000 of the city budget, and they would decide where and how they wanted to spend it. At least that was my math. She said it would be about 0.5% of the city's budget, which per my math works out to be about $250,000. My personal opinion, I don't love this approach. I think that Commissioner Songvi should go through a budget season before she makes a determination as to whether or not it's inclusive and what needs to be changed or adapted, because you don't really understand the budget process. As much as she might have an expertise in finance, you don't really understand how it's done here unless you go through a budget season. So I think she should go through a budget season, see how it works, see what kind of engagement there is from the public, and then perhaps look at doing something like participatory budgeting. But as of right now, I'm not comfortable with my tax dollars going to a group of residents who have no financial background, and we didn't elect into office to spend my money. Dan, your thoughts?
I will pass on this issue for now, Robin. I think you spoke well to it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, in that case, let's move on.
I think
So there was a little. Sorry, go ahead, Adam.
I was going to say, I think that rounds up city council, in the important talking points there. Go ahead.
Yes. Oh, sorry, there were just two other quick things. In the Public Safety Department, Commissioner Montanino talked about his report very briefly, the Darrell Mount report that we discussed prior. The City Council again reaffirmed that they are asking Governor Hochul to do an executive order and convene a grand jury to investigate the circumstances around Darrell Mount's death. So, despite the report coming out, that was still an item on the City Council agenda. And they did have also a public hearing on a civilian review board. They still haven't released any information as to what they're proposing for a civilian review board, but there was another public hearing for that last night. So I think that about does it for the City Council meeting. There were two other things we wanted to touch on. One I know was what happened at the school board meeting last night, because that's very important and more news for Saratogians.
That's right, Robin. And I have a name for this segment. Do you have your phone on you?
I do have my phone on me.
I'm going to send you the name, and you got to read the name of the segment.
Okay. All right. And then we got to wrap it up because we're almost at 45 minutes. Adam wants me to call this with so much drama in the BOE. You want to channel my inner Snoop Dogg?
Exactly. Well, I thought after the halftime show. So, real quick, I was jumping back and forth from the BOE meeting to City Council last night. The BOE started with some parents voicing concerns about the mask mandates. Some of them were unmasked. It caused the BOE to take a 10-minute pause to kind of regain control of the meeting. But I would say a lot of parents were there speaking out against the mask mandate. So I personally was encouraged to hear that. We'll see what Kathy Hochul says in a week. The other kind of, I would say, interesting part of the Board of Election, and to be honest with you, or Board of Education, it's the first meeting I've watched in its entirety. Boy, those go long. There is the Board of Education is pretty diverse in its politics, and they kind of get in their camps. The members, I would say, of the left part of the Board of Education put out a proposal, and the three of them did it. The problem is they didn't consult the rest of the board. And what that proposal was, it looked great. It was essentially praising our teachers, praising our educators, and kind of condemning any personal attacks against them or any incivility towards them. Which again, I think everybody can, being the son of an educator for 40 years, we can get behind. The controversy came, though, they did it unilaterally. They didn't consult the rest of the board. They came to the meeting and just presented this resolution. And I think when you do that, it causes issues with the other board members who don't feel like they had buy-in to this, who felt like some of the language might be attacking them in kind of a passive-aggressive way. And so for me, it was a little, why was this not done by the 9-member board? Why did 3 members feel the need to do this in secret and then drop it on the rest of the board, in the middle of the City Council meeting? Amanda, Robin, what's her last name?
Ellithorpe?
Ellsworth? Amanda, yeah.
It's Ellithorpe. It's definitely not Ellithorpe.
And I apologize for her name. She countered with a couple resolutions of her own that were, again, unilateral to just her. One was saying for the board to come out and support the head of the school board's, Dr. Patton's resolution that when masks become available, or when the mask mandate lifts in school on the state level, that the board will follow that and make them optional in the schools. So
wait, just to clarify,
go ahead.
Mike Patton is the superintendent. Yeah,
No
problem.
Yeah. So essentially, Amanda wanted the board to say, hey, when this is lifted in the state, and we will support the superintendent in lifting it in the schools. But because she dropped it on them, they didn't vote on that. She also referenced some social media posts that it was interesting. It was directed, I think, at some members of of our educational community. But it was interesting. It wasn't something I thought would be so engaging, but it really was. I encourage people to go to the board education meetings, or at least watch some of them, because it's as a parent, it is very informative. I found it just as interesting as the council.
I got to just jump in quickly and say it is really sad that politics have infiltrated our school boards like this. There's supposed to be like a separation of church and state here, right? I shouldn't know the political leanings of our school board members. There shouldn't be factions of school board members that are brought together because of their political positions. And I wish that hadn't happened. I also think that our educators deserve a huge round of applause for how they've handled this, excuse my language, people, but bullshit they've had to deal with because of the state's policies on masks and COVID in general. They are not compliance officers. They are educators. They didn't sign up for this. They are doing what they have to do because of New York State and staying compliant with New York State law. And they're just trying to make sure they can keep the school healthy and safe so they can try to educate our children. And I hope this resolves as quickly as possible, because I want them to be able to get back to focusing on what they do, and that's to educate our kids. So I'm sad that the school board is operating like this. I think they need to have a come to Jesus and figure out how to work together and communicate together so that they have productive meetings and can vote on things, and they're all aware of what's going to be presented before it's presented. But thank you for going at them. I appreciate that. Dan, any thoughts?
Yeah, quickly, I'm going to give us all three of us a plug and solicit gifts from our viewers, because we went through City Hall meeting last night. Adam went through the Board of Education. Folks, there's some sparks in those meetings, but generally it's hours of boredom, and we have to parse the news out of that. So Adam, good for you for doing that. I do also call BS. I don't know the politics of that board, of the Board of Education, but I call BS for one faction of the board blindsiding the other faction of the board. It's like, can you at least, you can have your differences, you're always gonna, I get that. But could you at least have some decorum and then some decency and give them a heads up of what's happening? That bothers me. And unfortunately, politics. You couldn't pay me enough they're unpaid positions. You could pay me six figures, and I wouldn't.
How about decorum and decency, though, for the people who come to the public comment at the school board meetings? I mean, some of the people in their comments are so disgusting in their language, and the way they're hurling accusations at the school board. I mean, Jesus Christ, parents, get it together. See the big picture here. Stop taking out your rage on people who are just volunteering their time and have good intentions, and don't make these policies,
I think at the end of the day is we can agree that politics needs to be really kept out of schools, essentially personal politics, because that's on both sides. It's not great. All right.
Anyway, guys, we're running out of time. Let's go into our quick cheers and jeers. Let's do our quick round robin cheers and jeers. Let's start with Dan. Who are your cheers and jeers this week?
I hate to be so negative. I always start with a jeer, but I'm going to go with jeers. Jeers to the dopers out there in sports, whether it's professional sports, the Olympics that we've seen a lot of, as well as in horse racing. And I'm going to focus on horse racing for a minute. And the people that are anti-horse racing are going to give me a big duh, but I am really getting disgusted when I realize the level of doping that is going on in horse racing, essentially killing these beautiful animals. And I am involved with horse racing at a small level. I've been owner over the years, not at the moment, but I'm really getting pause as to my role in horse racing, is whether I want to continue in what, in some negatives here. But there are some good signs that the sport is starting to correct itself. The hearings against Baffert and so forth, the convictions of several trainers and veterinarians in federal court recently. So there are some bright signs. We need to keep going in that direction. A cheer on that note to the Times Union, Emily Munson, a reporter there that is doing a series that I've been repeating that I've been posting on my site as well, Saratoga Report, but you could find the series on horse racing. She's going to win a Pulitzer out of this. She's doing really in-depth investigations. Kudos to that from the Hochul administration for releasing the documents. New York State Gaming, the agency that regulates horse racing, is not looking good in some of these articles. So we will follow up on those issues because they're so important. Whether you like horse racing or not, if you love Saratoga Springs, don't tell me that we can survive, or at least survive as we are now. If you want to reduce our restaurants and retail by 70%, I guess we could survive without horse racing. But it is so important to this city, whether you are a fan or not.
All right, Adam, what are your cheers and jeers?
Yeah, all right. Well, I'll start with my jeer because I'm going to jeer the Times Union You know, the Times Union has been very critical of Saratoga, and it's very slanted how they cover Saratoga. And this drives me nuts in national news. If you're going to, you know, there's certain outlets of news that we know what the bias is, but if you're going to, you know, claim to be fair and unbalanced, you have to be fair and unbalanced. The coverage of Saratoga never is. It's always skewed to the left, heavily skewed. And the perfect example is the report that was done, or the story that was done about the report that Commissioner Montanino did. It said, report in wake of Darrell Mount's injury, a failure of leadership. That's the headline. That's not what that was not the point of the report that Commissioner Montanino did. It was that Darrell Mount was not murdered by the Saratoga Springs police. And the Times Union, the headline and the age we're in, they just skip right over that. And that's the important part.
I believe you're talking specifically about a one Miss Wendy Libator, who is responsible for the Saratoga Springs content.
Yeah, that's right. She's usually the one who's writing these articles that are just you can't say you're fair and balanced and report on Saratoga like the way the Times Union and Wendy does. So that's my cheer. My cheer is to the Cincinnati, pardon me, not the Cincinnati.
Oh, come on.
The LA Rams. If you watched the show yesterday, I had them winning by 3.5 points. They won by 3. So anyway, congratulations to the LA Rams. Robin, take us away. Take us home.
Adam, you're officially not a good New Yorker, because no good New Yorker congratulates LA on anything. Come on, man, get with it. No, my cheer is for Governor Kathy Hochul, because her inbox is going to be filled with all the requests from our current city council. We have suddenly become like the most high maintenance little municipality in upstate New York for all the things that we are requesting from her through the city council. So sorry, Governor Kathy Hochul, but appreciate your handling all of our requests. My jeer is also for the city council, specifically the 4 Democrats who just took office. Commissioner Sirocco has been out sick. Commissioner Sirocco, Skippy, we love you, we miss you. I sent you a message this morning. But for the 4 city council people who are there, you say the word transparency all the time. It is probably the most frequently used word in their vocabulary. But when I went to go look up the meeting information for the pre-agenda city council meeting on Monday morning, not only could I not find the meeting anywhere, I couldn't find the Zoom link, I couldn't find any of the agenda items. None of this information has been made available publicly anywhere that I can find. But Saratoga Springs City Council, I don't think you have the even most basic understanding of what transparency means, because if you did, you would make sure this information is out there for the public. Public meeting laws govern these public open meeting laws, govern these meetings and how you run them. You got to put this info out, start communicating like you promised to do when you were campaigning, start being truly transparent. That's my jeer. That's our week. Thank you all for watching Talking Saratoga. I think Dan hopped off. Thank you. We will see you next Wednesday.
Nice.